Okay, I'd like to call to order the special meeting of the Dearborn Public Schools Board of Education of Tuesday, June 18th, Thursday, June 18th, 2015. Can we have a roll call?
Marion Bazzi.
Here.
Joseph Guido.
Here.
Mary Lane here. Roxanne McDonald.
Here.
Michael Mead.
Here.
Mary Petchikoff.
Here.
President Cholas.
Here. Next item.
Citizen participation. Those citizens who wish to speak may do so at this time. Please submit a blue card form and observe the indicated time limit, but I don't believe we have any blue cards.
Okay.
So it looks like
Next item is discussion.
next is discussion. Superintendent second interviews, Michigan Leadership Institute. Dr. John VanWagoner, Associate Superintendent, General Education, Shiawassee RESD.
Welcome again.
Oh, good to see you again.
Thanks for being here.
Sure.
So a little housekeeping here. Good evening.
Good evening.
On behalf of the Dearborn Board of Education, I'd like to welcome Dr. John VanWagoner to the interview. Dr. VanWagoner is currently the Associate Superintendent of the Shiawassee Regional Education Service District in Shiawassee County. I will take just a few minutes to describe the format of the interview tonight. The total interview may take up to 60 minutes. There will be approximately 15 questions. Most will be questions asked of all the candidates, however, some may be unique to each candidate. Towards the end, we'll give John an opportunity to ask questions of the board. We will entertain questions submitted by the audience if time remains. We'll provide an opportunity for John to make a closing statement, and Dr. Wilmot will keep track of time and let us know how we're doing on that. Audience feedback and questions may be submitted from our audience on the forms located at the table on the wall. That's the green form here. The board will consider these comments if the form has been signed. They are not duplicated. The question is legal and if time permits. The task of choosing our next superintendent is the responsibility of the board as representatives of our community. We appreciate and seek input of staff and community in the process. Please keep in mind the issues we may not use. I'm sorry, I am like tired and for some reason I cannot read today. Please keep in mind the issues we may not use as a basis for our hiring decisions. They are printed on the bottom of the form. We will pick these sheets up towards the end of the interview. And I get to start with the first question. We're going to, like in the last one, we're going to split up so that you'll hear some questions from all of the board members. So Dearborn has a long tradition of close collaboration with parent groups such as the PTA. How would you go about establishing and maintaining a strong relationship with the PTA and other parent groups?
Well, first of all, again, thank you for the opportunity to come tonight. It's been a great day to meet with the various stakeholders within the Dearborn community, and had the chance to meet some great people, but also learn a lot more about the district. And a couple of the folks that we had the chance to meet with today were a part of the PTA currently here in Dearborn, and it's an important aspect to have a great relationship with the parents within the district. And I've had the opportunity to work with a lot of parent groups, booster clubs, as well as the Parent-Teacher Association within two of the districts in which I served. And I think it's a really important aspect of knowing the voice of our stakeholders and that customer service that we provide. And so one of the things immediately I would do as superintendent would be to engage their leadership, to have conversation and actively participate with them. I know one of the things that's been strong that's happened here with the current superintendent is actively participating with that group, having conversations, being able to provide feedback from them on different things that are going on in the district. And as the leadership of the district works to make decisions collaboratively with the community, it's an important voice to be heard. And I think that the superintendent, to have a clear understanding, to be able to voice that with the board, as well as what the PTA's feelings are in certain things, ways in which they are wanting to reach out to collaborate and to work with the district, to provide resources for different things that maybe financially we're not able to. I think those are some important aspects. I know that a lot of mini grants are provided across the district to be able to provide some technology, some other resources that aren't necessarily available within the budget. And so having those folks as a resource and to have their say in what is really their school district, and that their children attend. I think it's an important thing that the superintendent actively has to be engaged with them on, as often as a basis, daily, weekly as possible.
Great. If selected as Dearborn's next superintendent, you'll be facing many new challenges overnight. What approaches and techniques would you use to leverage to assist you in successfully transitioning to these greater responsibilities?
So obviously, walking into the district, there's a lot to learn, and so there's a lot of long days and long nights to come in and be able to take a look at everything from, student achievement, number one, and looking at what are we doing to make sure that all kids achieve, taking a look at what programs are in place, what staffing is there, and then obviously, you're coming in right away to planning for a school year. And so you're going to have to understand real quickly the financial challenges, understanding the budget, understanding those things that one needs to happen. Also, you're in the midst right now of a SMART bond, and actively going on, and buildings are currently torn apart and being worked on, and having those things all ready for September when school hits is going to be a challenge, and making sure those things are in place. But it's going to be important to come in a part of the 100-day plan that I gave you last time we met, is really actively seeking conversation with every constituency group that I possibly can across the community, to be able to forge those relationships. As again, I told you that the superintendent's not going to be successful without immediately starting to build those relationships with all the constituencies within the Dearborn community. So I had the chance to start some of that work today, but obviously there would be a lot more need to take place to be able to understand, the goals of the district and the community, the collaborations that are out there for that to take place. And so, going on from day one and actively seeking those people out, preferably in their environment. So that includes, administrators in their school buildings or municipality, people within their setting, and be able to know that as a district, we want to reach out to them and be able to include them within our school community. So I think building those relationships as quickly as possible and getting to pace to where you can, as a superintendent, hit the ground running, because unfortunately there's no time to walk in and just absorb at a slow pace and just think everything's going to magically take care of itself. So you're going to have to be able to hit the ground running as soon as you walk into the position, and learn and absorb as fast as you can, and make sure that this next school year really starts off great for every student and teacher and administrator and support staff within Dearborn schools.
Ms. Lane is going to continue.
One point of pride for Dearborn Public Schools has been the Dearborn Center for Math, Science, and Technology. It was recently stated at a board meeting that this specialized high school program needs re-energizing. How would you feel about premier programs and their effect on the broader district? What would you suggest should be done, if anything?
So, one of the things that was interesting is when I had the chance to meet with students, they were all from DCMST, prior to our board meeting. And so it was interesting, their perspective. I think they're very, very proud of that program, yet they also feel like that needs to also be really analyzed closely on what, it is good of a program with how it can be made better. So I think, not just first thing singling out one school, though. I think collectively looking at the overall program. I think one of the things that as I look at the district that I think would be really important to start a conversation about immediately would be a strategic plan. And I mean that from the aspect of trying to say, okay, we have these multiple programs that we've built. Where are they headed in the future? What do we want that program to look like in 5 years? What type of resources do we feel that program needs in 5 years? And another thing that I think would be important to do is also, there are some similar schools like it across the state of Michigan. I've had the opportunity, my experience working with the state, both at the elementary, I've had a lot of chance in, but in the middle and high school level as well, to take a look at many of these innovative STEM-related programs. There's a lot that Dow Chemical, for instance, doing in the Great Lakes Bay region. There's some being done on the west side of the state. And so I think having the opportunity to visit some of those with board members, with teachers, students, support staff, and take a look at, may it reaffirm some things that Dearborn is doing really well, but it also may give the opportunity for people to take a look and say, that's something that we could add to this that could really make a difference. So I'm really looking at that from a data standpoint too, to see, is the program and an evaluation standpoint meeting the goals in which the district has set out for that to do. I think it's important, but I also think another thing is that taking some of those things that are at the Dearborn Center for Math Science and Technology and maybe embedding those into the traditional high schools as well is a key thing that I would look at. So for instance, Project Lead the Way is a program that's being done there that, you know, traditionally across the state, that program is also done within the traditional high schools as well. So you're giving the opportunity for multiple kids to experience that. And then maybe, you know, there's some other elements that the kids at the Dearborn Center for Math Science and Technology are experiencing as well. But I think, you know, building that program up, but also sharing some of those best practices so every kid has an opportunity for some of that. Those are some things that I would look at to try and build within the community. But collectively, having that conversation, because the kids, you know, ask me immediately, what would you come in and change? And I would not come in and change anything immediately. It's not my vision. It's a vision that collectively all the stakeholders that are involved need to come up with and talk about what's the best way collectively from a transformational leadership standpoint that we can make these programs robust and continue to be a success now and into the future.
When making decisions that have opposing interests coming from different school community groups, how would you determine the best direction to choose, and how would you support it?
I think, you know, again, the first thing is to come in with an open mind and to listen to all of their thoughts from that standpoint. And I mentioned this the last time we interviewed, of listening for understanding versus listening for debate. I think it's important to see all their sides and to collectively think about how that might fit together, or if they are opposing, of, you know, what does the data tell us from that standpoint of what we should maybe trying to support. So many times we look at programs and, you know, some people may like them and they may have a vested interest in them, but yet from a data standpoint, it may tell us that it's not being as successful as we think, or looking at other districts that may be similar and looking at, does that program give us our best return on academic investment that we want? So I think listening to all that, having a clear communication with them, having a clear communication with the board, to talk about, again, based on that strategic plan, where is it that we're looking at going 5 years from now? Where do we want Dearborn schools to be? And see how those thoughts and those viewpoints fit that vision that the community and all the stakeholders has set out. So, you know, while there may be 5 or 6 different programs out there that are phenomenal, we have limited resources. And so based on what that community vision is and that plan that collectively we've all signed on to of where we're going, you know, that we have to have a collective impact arrow on that and those programs. So I would base a lot of that decision making on that debate that would happen collectively with the community in that strategic plan.
My turn.
That's you, Joe.
Please describe a typical day of work for you in your current position.
Okay. So one of the things I had the opportunity is to hand you a copy of 2 documents that kind of maybe helps outline the services that my organization provides. You know, one of the things that's maybe a little confusing for some folks as I talk today, while we are an ISD and we're set up governance structure like Wayne Risa, we're really quite a bit different in a lot of ways, that we provide a lot of direct services to our local school districts. We do all of our technology. We do all that for our districts. So all CTE programming, our early college programming, for instance. So what I do is I interact daily a lot with administrators and teachers in working on trying to help build and strengthen systems. And I do a lot with working on creating professional learning opportunities for teachers and support staff. You know, a typical day, you know, is not all that typical, to be honest with you, but, you know, starting the morning off and trying to take, I'm a big list keeper. I really try and get a sense of what are the things that, you know, we need, you know, right now in a prioritized way. We are a service agency, you know, so we service the people within our districts. And so my goal is I really try every day to start my day off talking to one of the people within my district, be it the superintendent, be it a high school or an elementary principal, be it transportation, you know, director from one of our districts. Whatever aspect that is, I really like to start out my day, hearing what, they need and what supports they're trying to find. And so as the day goes, I try to collectively, I keep a very strict calendar. I use Outlook, from all aspects. It really outlines my day to the, 5 to 10 minute, intervals. And I often, it's working with schools and those staff members and that really are the heartbeat to supporting our kids. Do a lot of that, and I also, one of the things is I help to solve problems. I'm a big problem solver, especially, we're a real intermediate between MDE and a local district. So with my relationships that I've had at the state level, I've had a lot of success at mitigating problems that maybe a district's having with the State Department, be it that they're having an issue with a title audit, with their title funds that maybe one district was told they can do and another district's told they cannot, or maybe they have a teacher certification issue, or maybe there's some type of issue with some type of, we had one, for instance, district that I work with a lot that was a deficit district. And so working with that deficit district and working with the Office of State Aid, including as well as Treasury, to work on how they do that. That district actually this year is scheduled to be out of debt after 4 years finally. So they're real excited, but I do a lot of that type of work. And then I work with staff. We are the Math Science Center for a 5-county region. That person directly reports to me, as well as a lot of the things that you can see in that pamphlet. Those are services that we provide, and so I'm constantly working with our staff to make sure that from a project management standpoint that we're on time to be able to deliver those services, those trainings, and those things to our constituents. So as we ramp up this summer, that's a lot of what we do. We do a lot of this type of work to really plan on, data services, those kind of things, making sure that when the school day hits, that everything is ready to go for them, especially from a non-instructional standpoint. I supervise all elements of that and have to make sure it's right, because if it's not, if the student information system doesn't pull up and attendance doesn't work, I'm probably the first call. So that's, I deal from a lot of internal project management with our staff, and then a lot of mitigation of issues that our folks have to try and grow their programs, or issues they're having with compliance, because unfortunately we do have a lot of compliance with what we have at the state and federal levels, and we do a lot of trying to help them solve their issues with that.
One more. How have you prepared yourself to assume the top leadership role in a Michigan public school district?
So, I really feel like, based on my resume, that I've done just about everything that I possibly can. From an education standpoint, I have 4 degrees, including a PhD in educational leadership. I've served in many leadership roles at the local, intermediate, and state levels. I've had the chance to work with top education officials across the state, including the state superintendent, key legislative staff, legislators within all of the 4 House committees. I've participated in the Michigan Leadership Institute SUPS Academy, as well as I've participated in the Courageous Journey program with the MASA, the Superintendent's Association. I'm an active participant in MASA and MAISA, the Intermediate Superintendent's Association. Just yesterday, for instance, I was at the annual conference for MAISA, so I had the opportunity to meet with colleagues and learn from different things they're doing, and be able to understand the robust, great things that are happening in education and how to do those things. I actively seek out opportunities to work with people doing different programming, innovative across the state, whether it be early college program with the Michigan Early Middle College Association. I'm actively engaged with them. And I presented across the state working with the Michigan School Business Officials Association, as well as multiple other associations, including the Michigan Education Association. I've also even participated in some of their conferences, doing some things that we've done to work, especially in the area of teacher licensure and the idea of having certification, and trying to work with the department to maybe find ways to get teachers that are certified to be able to participate in student programming that we're having trouble finding. So really, from that standpoint, as far as any preparation program, any education level, anything that I can do, including the position I'm now, I sit actively with 8 superintendents twice a month at Superintendent's Roundtable. I work with them to talk about and help them with negotiations. I'm working with one of my district superintendents right now, sitting at the table with them through negotiations this summer. So every opportunity that I've had to work with superintendent counterparts across our county and to help them to to resolve issues and to enhance student programming, I've seized every time. And so at this point, my next step is to be able to take the lead of a strong school district within the state of Michigan, and I'm hopeful that this is my opportunity.
Thank you.
My turn. What basic philosophies do you have regarding collective bargaining, and what role should the superintendent play in the process?
So, I think that one key thing about collective bargaining is that I truly believe in the process. I believe that people should have the right to collective bargain. While I don't necessarily know that members of the legislature right now in the state agree with that, I think that it's an important part, and I've said this, in the last interview, and I say it many times, that we're a human resources organization. It's what we are. I mean, our students are first, and the people that are in front of students every day are right that next step. So having honest and trustworthy dialogue with them in the collective bargaining process and being very transparent in what we need to be able to do everything we can for those people that that are our lifeblood. And so making sure that we try and give every possible financial resource to be able to do that is an important role of the superintendent and the board in your leadership roles. And I think as the superintendent, I think having the opportunity to dialogue with the board on that, but I do not believe it's necessarily best for the superintendent to be directly the leader of that, because I want to make sure that as the superintendent, I'm able to always be in front of staff and be their biggest cheerleader and be the person that advocates for them in every way that I can, outside within the community and even outside at the state level and federal level. So it's hard, when you're in that process of working through those tough issues and things that, you want to give them as much as you possibly can, but yet we have financial constraints. And so I think sometimes, you can get a real relationship can get blurred in a lot of ways with that. So having a strong team that's a part of your team and as a part of a human resources team within the school district, I think is important, as well as having advice from legal counsel in that aspect as well is very important. I think being very informed of that, having conversation and dialogue with the board on how that process is and what needs to happen, I think are important things, but that's the way I would approach it as a superintendent here in Dearborn.
Thank you. When problems surface or a mistake has been made, how do you feel that information should be communicated to the board, to employee groups, and the general public?
Well, I think first of all, as a superintendent, you need to be a servant leader. And in doing so, that you need to make sure that you give credit to everybody else. And then when a mistake's made, that you take credit for that. And I think, being very transparent and honest is the key aspects. I think that if you are honest in those situations, and explain to the board situations that happen, I think a key aspect with that is keeping the board and the community informed of what's going on a constant basis in the first place, so that it's not a surprise if you have an issue. But when you have an issue and a mistake's made, to explain you've heard this information and this is where the essentially the initiative or the programming went wrong, and be honest about that. Take responsibility for it as the leader of the organization, and work with the board and the community to move on from that in the best interest of students. I think if you're going to as a leader try and point fingers and those things, you're going to have a tough time leading a group of people. And so having that attitude of analyzing it and saying, where did we go wrong? One of the things that in my history, especially working at the state level, we've done a lot of debriefing after issues, both successful and with problems. And then to say, okay, from a history standpoint can we learn from this? Where did we go wrong? How would we do it next time differently to make sure that we don't repeat that issue again? Because the last thing I want to do as a superintendent is come to the board and say, we made this mistake, and then a year again we made the same mistake. Shame on me, the first time, shame on you the second time. And so I think it's important to have that dialogue and learn from it, address the situation, hold people accountable from the standpoint of make sure, we've got to do this differently next time, understand what went wrong, and improve from there. So I think that's key.
Thank you.
Okay, it's my turn now. In the past, our district and community have been unjustly thrust into the national spotlight due to misinformed, negative outside influences. such as unwanted protest visits from bigoted individuals and groups. As superintendent, how would you approach and prepare for such a situation?
So I think, first of all, number one most important is to maintain student safety. You know, as we look at the students that are sent to us and their parents send us every day, the number one thing they want is for their student to be safe and come home safe. Student achievement is very important, but in the end, as far as values, that's the number one thing. So I would make sure that, you know, whenever we have a situation like that, maintaining student safety would be a number one goal. I think second would be working with the communications team to have a very clear and concise communications plan on how we're going to handle that. How are we going to convey the message of that, you know, we do not allow that within our buildings. We do not have members of our student community or our school community that are partaking on that in any type of on work time or, you know, anything like that. And quite honestly, I think, you know, as the leader of this community, it's important to come out and just say what's right. And I think that, you know, I think some of those things are, you know, so distasteful, and they don't contribute to a global society that we're teaching our kids to be able to work and thrive in, and that we need to embrace diversity rather than to do some of those bigotry type, you know, activities and that. But yet at the same point, do it in a very educated way to be able to explain that we're a community that, you know, that celebrates our diversity. In fact, to go on a national scale and show how we're doing this, and it's how a way that everybody, you know, can take a look at and be proud of. You know, I think that you know, the members of this community, no matter what race or ethnicity or religion or orientation, whatever it is, they are valued members of this community. And as students, our job is truly to educate all children. And that's what we're going to, you know, talk about, and we're going to, you know, as national media, whatever comes out, we're going to talk about the great things that are happening in Dearborn because of our diversity. And, you know, obviously the people have the freedom of speech and those things, and they have the ability to do that, but maintaining safety and working with law enforcement to make sure that, you know, our grounds and our people are able to still provide quality instruction to our students in that time. That would be my number one priority to make sure happens.
Thank you. Many new theories, innovations, and philosophies have been introduced to educational delivery in the last decade. What new idea do you feel has been the most effective in improving student learning?
So, you know, a lot of research has been done, a lot of things, and you know, quite frankly, I mean, there is no silver bullet. The most important thing that, you know, still happens is the relationship and the ability of a teacher to work with a student. And having quality teachers that know their content, understand pedagogical skill, and are supported are the most important thing we do. That being said, I think one of the things that I've taken a lot of look at and have really tried to embrace in working with our district is project-based learning. I really believe that putting kids in an environment in which they can be hands-on and they can learn from real-world application is a key thing that we can do and be able to build with that. So in my districts, we've done a lot. I've talked about in the STEM areas of Project Lead the Way, and working on, right now we're working on a lot of engineering programs and a lot of bioscience programs. But also, two of our districts have started what are called New Tech Highs, which are one-to-one technology-based environments that are co-taught, where 2 teachers work with 60 kids in teams, and they are cross-content in that way. The kids get to do hands-on activities. Everything is project-based in the way they learn. All of the content expectations, all those things are done in that project-based. In math, it's problem-based, a little bit different. That has a little bit more direct instruction in it to really get at, especially Common Core mathematical practices. So implementing that project-based real-world relevancy to students, I think, is one of the most important things we can do in finding ways to embed that. Still having some elements of direct instruction and those things embedded in, but changing that pedagogical practice to having problem-based or project-based learning, to me, is a really nice aspect. And now, as technology has entered that world, to infuse technology, not just technology for technology's sake, but to embed it as a work-based tool that kids will be in that global society I talked about going into. It's important that they're able to learn in that environment and providing the resources to be able to do that. I think that's the biggest, innovation from that standpoint in my mind going right now.
Thank you. And I have one additional question. What is your idea, or what are your ideas and visions for what every Dearborn graduate should have accomplished upon graduation? How would you measure individual student progress and success?
So one of the things I love that a lot of folks are introducing is the idea of individual learning plans, ILPs. And that's where, similar to a student with special needs gets an IEP, having, and that's a mandated component of federal legislation that we should do and we have to do. But also having a concept of having an idea of post-secondary planning of what does that student want to do? What's their interest? What are things that we have in this community that has so many resources? What are things that we can do to help them to explore what that the end game is as far as post-secondary, or what are the things that we can help them to prepare them for that? So I think instituting and having that idea of individual learning plans, we're seeing it a lot right now in those project-based environments to look at work-based learning. That are some things that can be put into that, and I think measuring it from did we meet our goal of that ILP as we sit down with students and parents, and their career goals? Is that EDP that's done the educational development plan in the 8th grade, or is that put in there? So I think looking at that and saying, did we meet the goals that we had for this student, and that they are prepared for that? We talk about career and college readiness, and I think career and college readiness now is that post-secondary world, whether it be, it's training somewhere beyond high school, if it's trade school, if it's the military, if it is looking at a 2-year college or a 4-year college, or maybe it's an apprenticeship within an industrial area. Whatever it is that we have that, I think that the real dynamic thing about Dearborn right now is there are so many avenues to help support that. And I think making sure that a student understands those opportunities, building that and giving them that pathway that they want to succeed is important. And then using data, from progress monitored testing, from formative and summative assessment built in to make sure that they are truly ready to hit that environment when they are. I think those are important aspects to have. So when you build the data, and if the student has, met what essentially we're saying they need to from a content standpoint, and then they have those real world experiences, I think they're ready to spread their wings and go and be active community members and hopefully stay and help the community grow.
Thank you.
Alrighty, now it's my turn. What concerns do you have about this position? What do you believe may be the greatest challenge you will face in the first year?
So I think as I look at the position, following somebody that's going to be the next state superintendent, it's not the easiest shoes to fill. And Brian's a great guy, and he's going to do great in that. But I think from the standpoint of, again, I talked about this, we have a large amount of students that come from poverty, and be able to meet the needs to make sure that those students are on track at grade level. They're able to meet the targets of able to read at 3rd grade. And I think having the large amount of students in poverty, as well as our ELL population, and make sure the resources are there to be able to make sure that teachers are able to instruct and to be able to have the things they need to make sure the students are able to achieve. I think that's the key thing. Resources are a key aspect as we move on, and while Dearborn is in ways fortunate, I think, to have been a held harmless district, I think that's also, as we look at funding in the future, I think that's going to be a challenge. And I think in this first year, taking a look and understanding that budget, while the district has worked really, really hard to get to that 5% fund equity, that can go very quick if things go wrong. And we know right now that the school aid fund is still on unstable grounds, and based on sales tax dollars and the way that the roads funding may come up still. We don't know how that's going to affect our funding source. I think being able to understand the budget, looking at resources, and in the first year here, understanding what they are and things we need to advocate for actively, are key things. I mean, today just alone, I didn't understand, and by talking with staff, I understand that, to not get 31A at-risk dollars that everybody else is getting, and the state putting so much money into 31A for, while the district used to get 31A and doesn't now, that's something right there alone to go, if we could some way work with the associations and things to lobby for everybody to get 31A, because the reality is we have higher expenses and we have a lot of kids in poverty, and the 31A dollars would make a big difference in helping towards that. So those are some things that I would really look at in the first year as challenges. But again, collaboratively communicating and talking with the stakeholders would be a key essential element of trying to get my arms around that.
Assuming that every school district should do a good job in the basics, what is needed beyond the basics to ensure that all students have a solid preparation for the future?
I talked a little bit about relevance for students, right? So, there are so many things, and that's the beauty to me of what we have the ability to offer at Dearborn with resources that, quite frankly, the charter community doesn't. I believe in embracing the arts and embracing the opportunities for academic, sport competitions such as robotics and those type elements, and as well as athletics, and having the opportunity for kids to have the ability to participate in all of those different activities for that real, what's traditional been talked about as that liberal arts education, still being able to maintain that beyond the basics, I think are key things, as well as looking at advances that are going on in new programming, looking at things that are going on with the maker movement, for instance, and mechatronics, and having kids to be able to have experiences with those, what I call next practices, not best practices, but next practices. I think staying cutting edge and giving those opportunities are something that, with the community resources and the community partners that are here in this community, with global auto manufacturer that's here right here in the community, and the understanding of what it takes to be cutting edge and know that industry, as well as many of the other industries that are here. I think those are some things that, as Dearborn moves forward, are some things that can tout that, quite frankly, others don't. I think that all those need to be maintained and found a way, and again, there are tight dollars and limited resources, but we got to do everything we can to maintain that type of programming that gives our kids, as I talked about before, the district of choices versus a district of choice. I think that's an important aspect that, quite frankly, some of the neighbors and some of the charters and other private institutions aren't able to give because of the great community partners and resources that are here in Dearborn.
Thank you.
We have the final questions. Elementary classroom teachers in general sometimes feel as though central administration really does not understand the challenges they face in the classroom every day. How would you go about establishing, developing, and maintaining a positive working relationship with elementary teachers?
So, one of the key things is that, I started my career, I worked in elementary schools. I was a teacher. I worked in 3 different elementary schools. So I have that understanding of what it's like, to have that day, and then, your teacher that does specials doesn't show up, of having maybe a class of, 27 to 30 kids, and understanding that you're teaching multiple subjects. Maybe you have had deep training in 1 or 2 areas, but with all of the Common Core, and as we move forward here, the state board in October is going to hear next generation science standards, and as those things move forward, having the training and understanding that you're a teacher that you don't just focus like a high school teacher may on 1 or 2 subjects. You have the whole gamut of that. So I think I have a unique perspective. I have 4 little girls that are all in elementary school. So having the opportunity to see them grow and see as the Common Core, for instance, has come through, and as math instruction has changed with them, and understanding of what it's looking like with all of the social ills that are coming in, that of students that are hungry, and understanding of maybe resources that aren't as up to date as we would like. I think those are important aspects to, that I have a personal understanding. I not only have I experienced it, professionally, but personally, to be engulfed in that currently, that's important for me. And so I think that, looking at having systems that are clearly articulated and having feedback from them of how those are built. One of the things that I'm really, big on is that as a central office administrator, I think I'm the last person, while I may have a great knowledge of pedagogical skill, all that, to go in and say, okay, you guys are going to do this and this way you're going to do it, when they collectively may be able to say, wait a minute, if we were to do this based on the way that we have things, it would be a lot better, and not come in again with that just, sorry, this is what's been planned, to go do it. Have that transformational leadership style to go in and say, here's what we need to accomplish, and really look at it from that backwards standing, as teachers, we're taught to backwards plan. Understanding by design as we look at, and so going back and saying, okay, from staff collective conversation, what's the best way for us to implement that and what will work? I think that's a key place to start right there with them, and not just assuming that what their daily life is like in some ways in which you might go and do that. So, as I talked with people today, it was interesting to talk about the Daily 5 and Cafe and different thoughts about how the success of that has been and other ways in which they would like to see maybe it improved, especially at working with kids that are at advanced levels of how they might advance. So I think having that collective conversation with them and seeing that they are experts in their field. That many people, they have master's degrees. They have many credits beyond master's degrees. They are professionals, and to have input from them on the way in which their school, should work along with their building administrator, who should have a voice in that as well, and collectively to come up with a way in which we're going to do that. I think it's an important thing from an elementary standpoint to look at.
Moving from an assistant superintendent role to superintendent, one of the major leadership challenges will be accepting less hands-on control of your primary area of expertise and allowing autonomy to your administrative team. How do you envision your leadership style changing, and what methods might you employ to foster growth and success of the administrative team? And how would you preserve their autonomy yet ensure that the goals of the district are accomplished?
So, first and foremost, I think I'm even a little bit more unique as an associate superintendent, that I'm of a regional education service district and not a local district. So I have people that are have great knowledge in their fields beyond what I do. I mean, I really am a big believer that, in those areas, hire people that are smarter than you. In those aspects, a really smart way to go about that. But I think, first of all, having trust with them, and having a faith that they do, in fact, have expertise in that, and letting them to go and do their job. Yet also having, cabinet conversations, having collective conversations of project management. I really strongly believe in that, of saying, here are the goals of what we want and we want done. Let's talk about what the plan is, backwards planning again, of getting from start to finish to getting there. And then letting that person go and manage what they do and do well in their expertise areas. And then to get periodic updates from them and say, okay, let's get an aspect, where are you at in that project management plan? And are we on schedule? Are we ahead of schedule? Or are we behind schedule? If we're behind schedule, why? What have the challenges been? What are some ways as an administrative team that we can try and have some conversation about ways in which to get that back on track? But once that is, let that person that's their role go and take that and do that. You're never in this role of a district with almost 20,000 students. You are not going to be able to, day-to-day micromanage the people that have direct responsibilities in the district, nor should you. We pay them good money to take their expertise and do the job that we ask them to do. And one of the great things is I investigating applying for this job is hearing from so many about the great leadership team that's been put in place here at Dearborn and the strengths that all those people have. So allowing them the autonomy to do that, but yet, again, staying updated from a project management standpoint on that, I think are key. And then, again, from that servant leadership standpoint, if things are going wrong, I mean, as leader, you are going to take, some credit for when things are wrong. But another key component is when things are going right, give them the credit, because they do the hard work. The staff people that you have as administrators and teachers and support staff, they do the hard work. That, you won't be able to do your job for 10 minutes the first day without their work and their support. So I think giving them praise whenever you can. I also think having them actively engaged in opportunities to learn and get professional learning is important as well. One of the great things that the folks that I've worked for, be it the state superintendent or be it the superintendent of the ESA that I work with now, I get the opportunity to participate in our statewide associations. I'm a member of MASA, MAISA. I get the opportunity to go and meet with colleagues that are like me. I get the opportunity to learn from them, and they get the opportunity to learn from me. And so I think giving them the opportunity to be embedded in that as well, to learn that, and, quite frankly, I think, the opportunities maybe they get to advance, I think, is a direct, result of your leadership in that way. And maybe, they do have the opportunity to become superintendents or upper level administrators. And I think that giving them the opportunity to professionally grow and use that expertise is an important thing that I would encourage and support them in any way I could to be able to advance in their career.
Well, that is the end of the board questions. So like in the other interview, this is an opportunity for you to ask us any questions that you might have. And then after that, we'll go on to, we have a couple of questions from the audience, but first you.
Okay, one of the things that was really interesting to me was looking at the SMART bond, and as large as that number seems, with as many buildings there are, that did just somewhat of a little bit in each building. As you've looked and you've talked, before Wayne County went and looked at enhancement millage, you did look at some other things within building structures and those kind of things. I'm just interested in, where just some thoughts on, where that might head in the future as far as capital needs and those kind of things for the district as, over the next 5 to 10 years.
One of the things that I think that we in Dearborn have been very diligent about in our history is building maintenance. And I think, when I first got on the board, and Joe can speak to this too, we used to put about $4 million a year in building and site from our budget. As soon as I got on the board 15 years ago, that's when serious budget cuts started to hit. And so we haven't been putting nearly that amount of money into our buildings. But I think because we did that up until that point, we weren't caught in a lot of the mess that some districts were. There are a lot of districts that have buildings that are half as old or a quarter as old as our buildings that were having to be replaced because maintenance had gone on so long. So we're really lucky to have the good building stock that we do. Our problem with capital improvements has been our growing population. 15 years ago, we had about 12,000 students, and now we have almost 20,000. So it's not that we haven't had to invest into the capital structure because we weren't investing before. It was because we were growing and we just didn't have the room. Having said that, we do have very old buildings that we constantly have to look at because of other reasons, electricity, technology, how the buildings function in today's classroom versus some of our buildings are over 75 years old. Teaching has changed a lot in 75 years and how classrooms are structured, so the sizes of the classrooms and things like that. This last bond, we did do a lot we did try to do something for everyone. In a district the size that ours is, we have to look out for everybody. We didn't do as much as we wanted to, and we still have a large laundry list of things that need to be done. Where we're going to go with that in the future, I'm not really sure. I'm sure that in the next 5 years or so, we're going to have to do a lot more improvements, but we haven't looked at a strategic capital investment program at this point. We did just recently do one at the college, and it's probably not a bad idea for us to do that at the K-12 as well. Does anyone else?
I think the other thing as well is some of the unit costs that we face in maintaining our buildings, because we do have a fairly large stock of buildings in the district that you don't find today. Slate roofs, masonry buildings, lots of detail. When we did the addition to Fortson,
One of our buildings is a historical site.
I know it is phenomenal to
Which
watch.
Yeah.
seriously
Gorgeous.
increases the dollar amount when renovations come into play.
yeah, so when we touch a building like McDonald's School or some of the other schools that are classics, it costs a fortune to maintain those schools. But, the community has spoken on several occasions that those are our gems, and we want to maintain those and keep them. We spent, I think, 3 or 4 times as much per square foot, maybe more, on Fortson as we did on any other school, just because of the dynamics. But they did a survey, and the district said, we want to match the construction that's there. We don't want to just put on a brick addition that doesn't work. So, and you can see the result. You can look at it, it's newer, you can tell that it's newer, but it's designed in the same classical style. So we do have that extra issue that a lot of school districts don't have. Maybe City of Detroit does because they have a lot of old buildings, but they don't,
Not many of
they
those
don't
are
treat
much.
their,
I don't think they're
yeah, they don't
investing.
treat their buildings, you know, as, there's not a building in the district that you can walk into and not be totally proud of
Yeah.
in our district. Everyone's maintained impeccably.
I think even the new construction too, if you look at it compared to, I mean, you have experience across the state to see the type of materials that are used, the longevity on our buildings, I think, will be a lot stronger than some of the newer buildings that are being built in other districts that are trying to save money by purchasing, you know,
Cheaper material.
cheaper material, inferior material, I guess is what I was trying to look for. Thank you. It does make a big difference, you know. Trustee Ling?
Yeah, this is not a capital thing, but it is a huge part of our budget, and I think we need to address, and I hope that there'll be state and national conversation about the rising costs of retirements and health care. We have no mechanism to drive those down, so every year our costs have increased so that now that a quarter out of every dollar is going to retirement. And yet the state will, I don't think there's been an honest conversation about this. Public schools pay this, but charter schools don't, because nobody ever retires from a charter school.
And they don't pay into the system.
Right,
as it
they
is from
don't.
in the
So,
mixers and all,
but yet we want people to have health care, and we want people to retire. We don't want everybody to die on the job. I mean, we
Right.
can't do that, for heaven's sakes. And
Don't want
and-
anyone to.
Right, it's great to have retired people in our community. So how do we do that in a fair way to everybody? Especially when lots of us are living longer retired than we're living working. So, you know, how are we going to do that with a shrinking labor force?
Well,
So,
and should we pay the price for people who haven't been as diligent with their budgets?
well, yeah.
Right.
a-
No, I
and
mean, there's a
state-
public,
Don't get
there's
us
a
started.
funding of
Public
schools
debate on that.
conversation needs to happen. The
Right.
legacy costs are huge in that.
Right, and that
how we're
needs
gonna
to be
address it.
honest. It doesn't need to be, oh, we're giving you $70
Right.
of best practices, but we're taking 50.
Right.
You know,
Take it from
so-
one pocket and put it in the
right,
other,
right.
you know,
Let's
essentially.
just be honest about it and have a discussion so that everybody knows what, you know, how much are we gonna pay for these things? And,
It's
you
too
know.
bad we don't have any pull up at the state level.
So we just have to worry about what's pulling him.
So, you know, at this time, that's it. I know that there's some questions maybe
Yep,
from
we
the
have two
community,
questions from
and
the
then-
audience,
And then
and-
I'll have an opportunity to.
Yes.
Okay.
We have 10 minutes, I've been told.
Okay.
So just keep that in mind. The first question is from Radawan. He said, you mentioned reviewing DCMST and possibly embedding classes in the high schools. Does that mean you would consider moving those classes back to the high schools? Could you please clarify?
I don't know that it does. I think, you know, again, the first thing is I told the students is I want to come in and look at it and collectively have a conversation about it. I don't know if it necessarily means that as much as it is raise the bar another level for DCMST, and then maybe you're taking some of those great things and best practices and putting those things as well in the traditional high school. You know, one of the things that the kids talk to me about, and I know has been talked to the board, is about some work-based learning opportunities and some mentorship opportunities that the kids at DCMST would like. You know, so that's the thing with, you know, my experience at the State Department and at the ISD is I understanding of pupil accounting and the ways in which there are ability to get waivers from the state superintendent, which would help. Where a student can go out and time, pupil accounting time, seat time can be waived and can go. And so the opportunities for kids to go and maybe work 6 weeks in an opportunity and be able to do that and move to those. As well as bringing in, you know, in that environment, very specialized people as mentors maybe. So I could see at DCMST, for instance, of maybe the opportunity of partners from the Chamber of Commerce that have unique specialties in engineering or engineering of technology specialties to be able to come in and work very intricately with those kids in a project-based type environment to a much deeper level that is really almost on the edge of workforce type training, and then, you know, the true introductory type things that you would have as far as intro to engineering and those kind of things that are happening now. I could see those raising the bar and rigor and opportunity for kids, you know, at Fordson, at Edsel Ford, and at Dearborn High. So that's how I would see it possibly done.
The next question is from Kevin Harris, and his question is, you stated on your last interview that a healthy fund balance is important. Given that the majority of the budget is employees, how would you achieve this goal without cutting programs or people?
Well, I think it's a fine balance. In the budget, right now the board has passed that, you're trying to essentially put $500,000 into fund equity next year and to try and raise that, and I think it's tough. The hard part that, this board's having right now when you have a 5% fund equity is that you're borrowing money to make payroll as you go on through the rest of the year. So you are losing money by having to borrow money. And so there's two aspects. One is, can we get to the point where we don't have to do that and there's more money to directly go into the classroom? The second aspect of that is that the state, as they are looking at financial early warning legislation, right now as the legislation sits, if you do not have a fund equity of 8%, you are going to be immediately put into a trigger mechanism for additional reporting and oversight from the Department of Treasury at the state level.
Which costs more money.
And time, staffing, and all those kind of things. And so, so you are then categorized into these districts that are at risk of default and of deficit districts. So, there's a real argument going on right now in Lansing what that should be. Brian, I know, testified last week to say that he thought 3 to 5% should be that number, but as the legislation sits right now, it's 8%, and Treasury is pushing hard for that to stay at 8%. So, there's this element of the cost that it will if you do not meet, auditors will tell you that 15% of a fund equity is the amount you really need to be able to maintain 3 months of funding to be able to have the school district go. So I think finding that fine balance of, hey, we've got to find a way to get additional resources. It's just flat out. That's the honest to God truth. And that's going to take advocating at the state level to try and make that happen. But I think, a district the size of this district has some influence, and I think trying to continue to push for different categoricals and those things and ways in which we can become a more efficient, as well as maybe provide some services more to other districts, like right now you do with Dearborn Heights District Number 7 with transportation. Are there other opportunities with municipalities, other entities to be able to do that, and see if we can chip away at trying to make sure we're very frugal and be able to put a little bit more in that and get us to at least maybe that 8% amount where we're not borrowing and where we're able to stay on that footing and be able to grow. So
Great. How much time? 5 minutes. We're doing perfect. So at this point, we have at least 5 minutes left. So if there's any closing statements or any comments or questions that you still have, this floor is yours.
Yeah, so, first of all, again, I just want to say thank you to the board, and again, thank you for the community, everybody for coming out. Really appreciate it. Had a great day again in the community, and this is about, just actively for this job, about the 4th time that I've been down here and driving around and talking to people, and staff members that I had the chance and community members to talk to today were great. I had the chance to learn about so many different aspects of the district that just makes me more excited about the opportunity to be able to lead it. I think that while every job that you may look at in public education is facing challenges, I think that the level of commitment that the staff, the community, the students, the board, just collectively the Dearborn schools have great assets. And I think looking at the future as far as what it has to offer with the relationship with Henry Ford College and the opportunities that our students are having post-secondary wise, I think are so unique. As I've talked to friends and counterparts that I've talked to over the last week to tell them the stories of what's able, students that have as opportunities and the relationship that the board has with the governance of both Henry Ford College and Dearborn schools. They've been amazed at, how excited, first of all, I am about, having the chance to learn about it, but just the wonderful opportunities that the students here have. And I just want to say congratulations on all those things. They need to be celebrated. The staff needs to continue to be celebrated on the great work that they do day in and day out. But yet, I think that there's another level to go. I think that, taking the district to new heights and to a level where from a national scale that Dearborn's known, as that culturally diverse district that offers so many opportunities to their students that people are really, really jealous of the opportunities and really want to move into the community and a place for new people to come in and raise new families and have a quality of schools that they're proud of. Would just love the opportunity to help lead. And again, I want to thank all of you for the opportunity for being here. And I've had just a wonderful time.
Well, we appreciate your continued interest in the position, and we'll be in contact with you shortly regarding the status of our decision-making process. Just FYI, I don't foresee us making this decision today. It will most likely happen on Monday. We sincerely appreciate your time and your interest in the district, and for coming again today to visit with us. And we enjoyed meeting you, and I hope that you enjoyed getting to meet us and the community, and we do have a lot to offer here.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Take a bottle of water with you.
Thank you, everybody.
And just for the audience's benefit, we're going to take, I believe, a half an hour break, and the next interview will start at 7:30.